The Sabbath occurs on the 7th day from the beginning of the week. So Sunday is the first day and Sabbath is the 7th day. The first day of the week being Sunday. So we look at Matthew 28:1. It says, now after the Sabbath, and this is following the Sabbath after, this is the Sabbath during the time of the Passover. Now after the Sabbath, towards dawn on the first day of the week, Miriam from Magdala and the other Miriam came to see the tomb. The first day of the week isn't variable. It's always Sunday. Nor is the 7th day, is it variable? It's always the Sabbath. So the Sabbath day is not determined by the lunar phase. The sun determines when the day of the week arrives, because as the sun goes up and the sun goes down, the sun goes up, the sun goes down, it continues this cycle until it gets to the sun going down on Friday night and the Sabbath gets here. So looking at the calendar of man, we keep track of time through calendars and through newspapers and through our phones and through local and national world news. We keep our calendar through clocks, but we also keep calendars through the sun, and know that God has his own calendar that is established through his creation, and we are told what his calendar is through Scripture, and his Torah explains to us his calendar of feast days. So we know that the moon is a clock. It's a big clock in the sky telling us when the feasts or the appointed times will be here. Watch and observe and note the pattern and see the calendar like a big clock in the sky. So let's take a look at the months. The month is divided into the years into 12 divisions. So we have 12 months. So 1 year equals 12 months. And the month is determined by when the new moon arrives. Now there can be 13 months if the barley is not abib. And so what the word abib means a ripeness. So if the barley come like around March or April is not ripe yet, then there could be a 13th month. So a month is a unit of time used with calendars, which is approximately as long as a natural period related to the motion or cycles of the moon. A lunar month is the time it takes the moon to pass through all of the moon phases, measured from one moon to the next moon. A clock, the sun, and moon are all instruments of timekeeping. The sun keeps time of our days and years, as well as the weeks, and the moon keeps time of our months. The weekly Shabbat is determined by the timekeeping of the sun. Like I said before, it goes up and it goes down, and we cycle through the days of the week, getting up to the end of the week, the 7th day of Shabbat. And so the annual Moedims are determined by the moon. The sun doesn't determine the annual Moedims or the feasts, the moon does. A lunar month is comprised of all of the moon phases, and the moon determines the months. A lunar month is also known as a lunation, while the astronomical term for this period is a synodic month, from the Greek term synodos, meaning meeting or conjunction. The Hebrew calendar can have 12 or 13 months, like I said before, depending on whether or not the barley is abib or ripened. So in the Hebrew perspective of the month names, we get those names from Babylonian names that came from the Babylonian captivity. And so we have these Jewish month names, which in in Hebraic or Messianic circles, we tend to use them as well as using like numerical months, like the first month or the seventh month. So the Jewish month names would be Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, Av, Elul, Tishri, Shavan, Kislev, Tevet, Shevet, Adar 1, and Adar 2. So before Babylon, I presume that they probably referred to them just as numbered months, except for a couple of months in the Bible they have some Hebraic names to them, but mostly they probably just referred to them as numerical months. So Abib or Nisan, the Babylonian name, is the first month on the Jewish calendar. So before the Jews left Egypt on the first day of the month, Elohim told Moses and Aaron that this Kodesh, or this new moon, or new month, shall be to you the head of months. And that is in Exodus. And so Nisan is the Babylonian name, and month or moon is interchangeable. It's used as the same word. So when we're talking about a new month, we're talking about the new moon. If we don't know when the Rosh Chodesh is, we will miss the feasts, even the appointed times. The word moon comes from the Hebrew word yeriach and means lunation, to be yellow. The word yeriach is also translated month, as is Kodesh. A lunar month is the time the moon takes to pass through the complete cycle of its phases, and is measured from one new moon to another, meaning from one conjunction to the next. A lunar month is about 29.5 days, and if we want to get kind of Spockish about it, we will say 29 days, 12 hours, 43 minutes, 11.6 seconds. Month equals moon. So we have the word Kodesh, meaning the new moon, by implication a month. So if we look at Genesis 7:11, and you'll see here in this scripture that I have in the version of having the Strong's Concordance intermingled with the scripture. It says, in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, the 17th day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened. Well, the scripture is clearly talking about a month, because there are at least 17 days in the month. How was the moon determined in Noah's day? Well, I would think it was determined in the same way. So when we look at 1 Kings 6:38, and in the 11th year, in the month Bul, which is the 8th month, so here's that little indication of we had a couple times in Scripture when they actually had a Hebrew word for a month, and this is one of them, the month of Bul, which is the 8th month. Was the house finished throughout all the parts thereof, according to all the fashion of it? So was he 7 years in building it. The word month is used twice in this verse. Yeriach and Kodesh are both meaning month. Okay? Yeriach is from an unused root of uncertain signification, a lunation, that is month, moon, or month. And then we have Kodesh, which means the new moon. So the first one in Strong's 3391, that means Yeriach, which means a lunation or a moon. And then when we get down to Strong's 2320, we have the word Kodesh, and that also means new moon or a month. So when is the new month? And a lot of people out there that are new to Torah or have been in Torah, maybe you've been in it a while, and you've really struggled to find out when a new month is, because it doesn't really clearly tell us in Scripture, at least on the top level. We don't really have a clear-cut understanding of a new month until you really have to tear apart the Scriptures and really study when the new month is. So we really don't have it expressed to us, thus saith the Lord, this is when a new month is. So we really have to study the Scriptures to find out when it is. So determining what the new month, the new moon is, will show us when the new month occurs. So if the moon rules the night, then how can the dark moon, commonly called the new moon, be the head if it cannot be seen at night? Well, the answer is clear: is most things start off in darkness, such as creation. A lot of things start in darkness and we don't see them, but they're still there. So when we look at our calendars that you may have in your house, you may have a calendar like this one that's on the screen that actually shows you when the dark moon is. And that a lot of the calendars that are printed out there, they will show you when the new month is, indicated by the dark or black circle on a calendar. So for the year that this production was made, we have February 2019. The new moon starts on February 4th, and you can see on this calendar it's indicated by the black circle, and you can also see that on your own calendars too. And then we look at the different moon phases as indicated by this graphic. We see the dark moon on your middle left. It starts off in dark moon and then goes to a sliver moon. And so the sliver moon is not really is and isn't both an indicator of the new moon. The sliver moon is not the new moon, but when the new moon has, or the dark moon rather, has finished its phase and the sliver moon comes out, it's an indicator that that phase has been accomplished. The sliver moon is like a witness to the dark moon to say that that phase has been completed. So then we go into its phases and we go into the quarter moons all the way over to the full moon. And when we get to the full moon, we know that it is the middle of the month. So every time you see the full moon, you know it's the middle of the month. Maybe it's not the middle of the world's calendar of the month, but it is on God's calendar. In fact, when you go to unleavened bread, and it's the 15th day of the month, you'll see that it is a full moon. And if you think about it, when you study the Scriptures or study the story of the Exodus from Egypt, it would make sense why they would need a full moon, because they need the fullness of the moon's light in their Exodus, because they left in the middle of the night. Also, when we do Sukkot, you know that it is the first day of Sukkot because it's the 15th day of the 7th month. You'll see that it is a full moon, completely full. Now there are there's a part of the full moon that hasn't been quite full that will look like a full moon. So you have to look carefully to see that it is fully completed, because there's a part of the full moon that will look like it's full, but you look at it the next night and that's when it really is full. So both unleavened bread and Sukkot are marked by a full moon. So you go around from full moon to another quarter there, and then you journey all the way to the next dark moon, and you have the next month. So you have the complete cycle, or the phases of the moon, from dark to the quarter, to the full moon, to the other quarter, to the dark moon. So the moon phases have a term called the molad. The assumed time of a new moon is called the molad. The interval between successive molads is assumed to be about 29 days. So you heard me giving you the Spockish term of how long a molad is. So it's about 29 days and 12 hours. So that is the interval between the phases of the moon would be about 29 days. So we look at the phases of the new moon. The new moon is when the new moon is when the moon cannot be seen because we are looking at the unlit half of the moon. The new moon phase occurs when the moon is directly between the earth and the sun, and so that is called the conjunction of the moon. So we get to the first phase of the moon, and that is called the waxing crescent moon. So that's the first phase when we come off of the moon conjunction or the dark moon. It's when the moon looks like the crescent, and the crescent increases, it waxes. So waxing and increase are the same thing. And so it waxes in size from one day to the next. Then we get to the first quarter moon, or it's a half moon, and that is when half of the lit portion of the moon is visible after the waxing crescent phase. So the waxing crescent phase has left, and the first quarter moon has advented. Then we get to a waxing gibbous moon, occurs when more than half of the lit portion of the moon can be seen, and the shape increases or waxes in size from one day to the next. The waxing gibbous phase occurs between the first quarter and the full moon phase. So when you see this waxing gibbous moon phase, the next one you will expect to see will be the full moon, which is the middle of the month. So then we get to the full moon. The middle of the month is when we can see the entire lit portion of the moon. That is the portion of the moon that we see in pictures, or we can think in our minds the moon, because that's when we can see the moon the best. So the full moon is when we can see the entire lit portion of the moon. The full moon phase occurs when the full moon is on the opposite side of the earth from the sun, called opposition. So then we get on the other side of the full moon phase, and we go kind of like the first half of the phase, except now we're on the flip side. So now we're on the waning instead of the waxing. The waning gibbous moon occurs when more than half of the lit portion of the moon can be seen, and the shape decreases or wanes in size from one day to the next. The waning gibbous phase occurs between the full moon and the third quarter phase. So now the next phase would be the last quarter, or the third quarter moon, or half a moon. So a half a moon is when half of the lit portion of the moon is visible after the waning gibbous phase. So then we get to the waning crescent moon, is when the moon looks like the crescent, and the crescent decreases, wanes in size from one day to the next. And then the last one, the last phase of the moon is called the old moon, or the old month, and that happens when only a very tiny bit of the moon can be seen in the corner, about to turn into a new conjunction, or the new month or new moon. So here we have the phases that I was just talking to you about. The new moon starting off in darkness and going through its different phases. And so we have the phases of the moon in its molad, lasting about 29 days. So at the end of 29 days, we should expect to see a new conjunction. Okay, so the word sign is the word alt, meaning a sign, a signal, a mark, a token, an emblem, a signboard, a standard. That's the word I like right there, the standard. So we can know the standard of God's Moedim, his sign, his alt. In the Tanakh, which is the Old Testament, alt describes such visible signs such as Noah's rainbow, Cain's mark, the circumcision, and the Sabbath. The Sabbath itself is a sign. It's also a sign of us in covenant with Yahweh, that we are His. So we look at the moon in the Song of Solomon, chapter 6, is different than the moon in Psalms 81:6. Let's look at Song of Solomon, chapter 6. Who is she who shines forth as the morning, fair as the moon, clear as the sun, awesome as an army with banners? Who is this that looks down like the dawn, beautiful as the moon, bright as the sun, awesome as an army with banners? And so these are two different words, two different versions, one in the Scriptures version and one in the English Standard Version. So bright and clear are meaning the same word, the Hebrew word kalabanah, meaning full moon. Kalabanah, full moon. But in Song of Solomon 6:10, we find the word kalabanah. These are the very first three letters of this word literally mean white, which is Lebanah, or Leben, meaning white or whiteness. The first place this word is used is in Genesis 7:19, where the waters covered the earth. This demonstrates that the word Kodesh in Psalms 81:3 is covered, which is the exact opposite of being full, which would be the word Lebanah. So we have the two versions of Song of Solomon 6:10, where the moon is being seen as the full moon, being Lebanah, where in Psalms 81:3 we have the word Kodesh, the moon being in darkness or being covered, which is the opposite of Lebanah. So one is covered and one is full. It says, "Thus says the Master Yahweh, the gate of the inner court facing east is shut the 6 days of work, but on the Sabbath it is open, and on the day of the new moon it is opened." So here we have the new moon is seen as the renewed moon. The new moon is important to observe as it tracks the changing of the months. The changing of the moon or the month signifies the road to the feasts. With the weekly Sabbath being the exception, a correct understanding of the calculations of the biblical feast times is the beginning of satisfying our desire to keep the feasts of Yahweh. We must first start with how to calculate the first day of the month. Without being able to determine the first month and the first day of the month accurately, then correctly determining all the dates of the appointed times thus will become impossible. The first day of the month is called Rosh Chodesh. It is the new month. It is the head of the month. The Hebrew word Kodesh, a derivative of the Hebrew word Hadesh, which means to restore, repair, or renew oneself. Psalms 104:19. He made the moon for appointed times. The sun knows it's going down. It is the observance of the month cycle that we are to use to determine the appointed times. How do we do this? We must know when a new month is. How do we calculate the first day of the month? Well, if we know when the first day of the month is, then we can count the 29.5 days until the next month, and that's when we would expect the new conjuncture to happen. Counting first the days and then the months, we can know when the first days are. So we're counting we're counting the days, the 29.5 days, to know when to expect the new moon or the conjuncture. And then we count the months to know first, we would know when to expect the first month, That's when we have a bearing of when to expect the counting of the next month. So we would have to know when the first month is, the head of months, the beginning of months is, and then we would know when to expect each month after that, to know when to expect the other feasts to arrive. Here's a question to ponder upon. With our understanding of what a new moon or new month is, what part of that day does the first day of the new moon start? In other words, if the new moon starts on a particular day, does the new day start before the new moon arrives, or does it happen the next day or next evening after the new moon has begun? We must now turn our attention to talking about when does the first day of the new month begin. And so when we identify when a new month is, we must also identify when does the first day of the new month begin, because this is going to be very helpful in being able to track when the feasts begin and have arrived. So to do that, we are going to go back again to the creation story in Genesis chapter 1, starting in verse 14. And so in this verse, we are going to be talking about the fourth day of creation. So let's turn to that scripture where it says, "And God said, let the lights be in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let it be for signs and for seasons and for days and years." And in this verse here, we can see here in the creation story that Yahweh has put into the sky in creation the formation, the creation of the sun, moon, and stars. And so the sun, moon, and stars, they are put in for its purpose, or one of its purposes anyway, for being signs and for seasons, and to mark the days and to mark the years. And verse 15 says, "And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven, to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also." In this verse, we see the other purpose that Yahweh has made the sun and moon is to define when the daylight is, the day, and when the lights of the night occur. So we can use these two great lights to tell us when the new month has arrived and when the first day of the new month has arrived. Verse 17, "And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth." And so here we have this truth of creation where Yahweh has put these lights to put light upon the earth, one for the daylight hours, the other for the nighttime hours. Verse 18, "And to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness, and God saw it was good. And the evening and the morning were the fourth day." And so this last part of the last part of the creation story about the fourth day is paramount in discovering when the first day has arrived on the new moon, the new month. So we can see here that before the end of the fourth day has happened, there's the arrival of the moon. And how does that relate to us today in discovering when the new day of the new month is? The answer to the question of when is the first day of the new month lies with first understanding that the new month begins at the moon conjunction. And so when we establish when the new moon begins, we can then move on to understand when is the first day of the new month. So the question has arisen, especially when keeping the feasts, is Does the new day begin before the new moon, at the new moon, or after the new moon has begun? So when we first understand when the new moon happens, we know that it happens when the moon conjunction has happened, or if your belief is that it is the sliver moon. In any case, whenever you've established when the new moon is, you have that as being your basis prior to when the new day begins. So what I mean by this is, first establish when is the new month, when is that started, and then the next day, when the day begins at sunset, when we have the understanding that the day, as we've already talked about, a day begins when the sunset has arrived, we can apply that to when the new day of the new month is. So backing up a little bit here, we can see that the new moon is first established, whether it be a moon conjunction or a sliver or crescent moon. We first establish that. So when that day is established, then the very next day at sunset, we have the new day of the first month. And I hope this helps you understand and clarify when is the first day of the new month. So when is the beginning of the new month? The Bible clearly tells us that the moon is to measure the months, and without the months you would not know when to celebrate the feasts, because we know that a moon equals a month. So we have to look at this thing of calculations and counting. Observing the days, we can count and observe to the new month. Observing the months, we count the months, days, and weeks to feasts. There are several examples in Scripture that we can look to when we are counting. So we count 7 days to the weekly Sabbath. We count 14 days from the month of Abib for Passover. We count 50 days to Shavuot. We count the months to the 7th month for the fall feasts. We count the days of the months for the feast days. We observe and number the first month. We eat unleavened bread for 7 days, and we count the days to first fruits. So all of these things are involved in counting and knowing of when the feast will happen. So you will find yourself in keeping the feasts. You will be given to a lot of counting and calculations and observing. So we know that the sun determines the days, weeks, the years, and the weekly Sabbath, and the moon determines the months and the other feasts. With many calendars out there, everyone must agree that all calendars incorporate an understanding of when their calendars begin. Simple? No, not really. As we live in our calendars under the Gregorian standard of timekeeping, we understand that we have the months of January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, and December. These are our typical calendar months that we live under, which is called the Gregorian calendar system. But we also have another calendar system that we live under, which is under a Hebrew calendar. But we have these names of the Hebrew months that are not necessarily Hebrew in nature, but they're Babylonian in their etymology, meaning that we got these names of the Hebrew months from our Babylonian captivity years. So these Hebrew months would be Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, Av, Elul, Tishri, Shesvan, Kislev, Tevet, Shevat, and Adar 1 and Adar 2. And so, whereas our Gregorian months are 28 to 31 days in length, Hebrew months can be either a 29 or 30 day length. And so these Hebrew month lengths, they are dependent upon the moon cycle. So if we were to start to calculate when the new moon comes, we can see that by calculating when the new month comes each month, it will cycle between a 29 and a 30-day cycle, with a few exceptions during the year. And the reason for these 29 or 30-day increments that kind of go back and forth is because some of the months may have a new moon that may last more than one day. So like I said, Hebrew months can be either 29 or 30 days in length, and Shesvan and Kislev can be either 29 or 30 days. So the months that we would have that we need to look at in their length, we look at Nisan, which is 30 days, and we see that Ayer is 29 days. And so we see that we're looking at the 2019 calendar to kind of show you how all this works out. So from April 4th to May 4th, we have a 30-day molad. And remember, a molad is a cycle of the moon. And then we go on to Ayer, which is 29 days, and that goes from May 4th to June 2nd, giving 29 days of the molad. Then we go on to the third month, the Hebrew month of Sivan, and that goes from June 2nd to July 2nd of 2019, giving us 30 days of the lunar cycle. Then we go on to the fourth month of Tammuz, which is 29 days, and that goes from July 2nd to July 31st, 2019. So remember, these are all going to change from year to year as far as when they happen, but the cycle should still remain the same. So now we get to the fifth month of Av, and that's July 31st to August 30th, 2019, giving us 30 days of the molad. And then we get on to the sixth month of the Hebrew calendar, which is Elul, which is 30 days, going from August 30th to September 29th, 2019. And so at this time, at the end of this month, we'll start the beginning of the fall feast, giving us a 30-day lunar cycle. So now we go on to the seventh month of Tishri, which is a 30-day lunar cycle, going from September 29th to October 28th, 2019. Then our eighth Hebrew month is Shesvan, which can be 29 or 30 days, and that happened October 28th to November 27th of 2019. And now we go on to the ninth Hebrew month, which is Kislev, and that could be 29 or 30 days, going from November 27th to December 26th, 2019, giving us 29 days of the molad. And then we go on to the 10th Hebrew month, which is Tevet, and that is 30 days, December 26th, 2019 to January 25th, 2020. And so now we're getting into the final months of the Hebrew year, with Shavat being 29 days in length, January 25th to February 23rd, 2020, giving us 29 days of the molad. And then finally we wrap up with Adar 1, being 30 days, February 23rd to March 24th, 2020, where March 24th would start the beginning of months for the new Hebrew religious calendar. So a year in the Hebrew calendar can be 353, 354, 355, 383, 384, or 385 days long. Regular common years have 12 months with a total of 350 days, where leap years have 13 months. This would be where we would have the Adar 2, and the Adar 2 would happen so that you don't keep Passover too early, where the snow is still on the ground or spring hasn't happened yet. Leap years have 13 months and 384 days long. Months with uneven numbers usually have 30 days, while months with even numbers have 29 days. So this, just remember that the idea that we have 29 or 30 days alternating is based upon the the new moon, how long it sticks around. So there's about, roughly 3 or 4 times a year where the moon sticks around for 2 days instead of 1. So this is going to lengthen the day from the month from 29 to 30 days. So when we're looking at the length of the months, we have to keep in consideration of when the new moon gets here and when the last moon cycle disappears. So the months are not exactly 30 days in length. They're actually 29.5 days. So that 0.5 can go on either side. It could be on the side of the 29 or it could be on the side of the 30. So these are important things to look at when we are trying to calculate when the new month gets here. We have to understand what is our belief of when a new moon or new month starts. And there are various ideas out there. Determining what calendar we follow is determined by how the new month is determined, which is determined by the understanding that the month is governed by the moon. The full moon is when the side of the moon visible from the earth is 100% illumination. But we also understand that the moon is its own source of light. Going back to Genesis chapter 1, we see that God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. It says nothing here about anything short that the moon is its own light. He made the stars also. And God set these elements of timekeeping in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. If the moon was not truly its own light, then there would be only the sun given the moon its source. But it doesn't say that. It says that the earth and the moon are their own individual sources of light. So we look at the word lunation. A lunation month is the mean or the average time from one new moon to the next. And we've already discussed in Spock terms that the average length of a lunation is 29.530588 days, or 29 days, 12 hours, 44 minutes, and 2.8 seconds, if you want to get exact.